Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Orbit Football Podcast today. We're doing a Week 6 preview today. Got 8 games on the docket, switching it up from our usual 10. A bit of a back half of a weaker slate. There's some good games, though, I will say, at the top half of this slate this weekend. But you're joining myself, Cade, along with Tyler. And Tyler, we've got a special guest joining us today, don't we?
Yeah, we do. So we're going to be introducing my friend Blake. We've been in a Twitter chat. We've been pretty good friends through, especially college football content, and we honestly talk a lot about having we'll watch games together. It's normally always me and Blake, and then Cade will occasionally hop in. We're all kind of spread across the state. But how you doing, Blake?
Pretty good. Happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no problem, Blake. We're happy to have you on here today, and we're happy to get into some games. So let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. Obviously, the biggest game this weekend, we're going to talk about it first. Noon kick down there, Dallas, Texas, in the real Cotton Bowl. We've got the Red River rivalry this weekend. It's going to be a good one. Texas and Oklahoma. Texas comes into this one ranked third in the AP poll. Tyler, you got them at your number 1. I have them at my number 2. We both have Oklahoma around the 12 spot, which is their ranked in the AP poll. But this one, neutral site game, Red River, Texas by 6.5. Tyler, I'll ask you first. What are your thoughts on this game?
So my thought immediately when I knew this game was coming up is, how is Oklahoma going to be able to score? I think that obviously their passing game has been pretty well, but I don't think it's been tested against the best of competition. I would say probably their best defense that they played so far this year would either be Iowa State not Iowa State, Cincinnati or SMU. And in those games, then they dropped 28 and 20. And when we're talking about Texas, they obviously had a game that I think we saw as Alabama looking horrible, which obviously that did happen, but they've been looking a lot better offensively lately. And I think that that's a good thing for Texas, because I think it showed how good their defense was in that moment. Their pass rush has been pretty well, and I think that if Texas is going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback, especially Dylan Gabriel, he's going to be the biggest part of this game, because if Dylan Gabriel doesn't play good, I don't think they have a shot to win. But with that being said, Dylan Gabriel has been playing very excellent this year, and Ryan Watts, it looks like he's going to be daytime, which is he's a boundary corner for Texas, obviously a big player, transfer from the Ohio State a few years ago. But when I look at this, it's obviously going to be in the Cotton Bowl, going to be a really good game, and a 6.5 point line feels a little large for Texas. I'm going to pick Texas to win, but I think Oklahoma covers by a point. I'm going to go 29-23. I think Texas does get it done, but I do think that if Oklahoma's defense comes to play and they can limit Texas through the intermediate and deep passing game, I think Oklahoma does have a really good shot to win this game. But I think for Oklahoma to win, Dylan Gabriel is going to have to be pretty good offensively, and I think they're going to have a consistent running game to be able to push them down the field and keep Texas on the field. And they're going to have to flip it with some 3-and-outs or just shorter offensive possessions for Texas.
Yeah, I'm picking up on what you're saying there for this ball game. When I look at it and I break it down, when I look at this one, obviously I was with you. I thought that Alabama just was not the best of teams this year, but they've looked like they started to figure some things out over the recent weeks. Obviously, that win against Ole Miss was really big for them after their struggles against USF on the road, and we'll get to them here shortly. But Texas has looked good. Last week in the second half, they really were able to turn it on, and that's I've been rising on Texas all year long, and then I finally, after seeing that second half, and what they could do to Kansas, and so quickly just turn that game into a blowout where it was really a one-possession game, and by really the start of the fourth quarter, the game was almost getting out of reach at that point. But Oklahoma, I've been flipped on this team a lot this year. I like Dylan Gabriel. I like that offense. I like what they can do. And the defense, it's been good, I will say. Like you said, they limited SMU, I believe, to 14 points in that ball game. SMU, a pretty solid offense down there. But I think partially, a lot of people are going to say, oh, they didn't look good against Iowa State last week. Their defense didn't look good. They allowed 20 points and a half. Well, the thing is you could also be looking ahead if you're Oklahoma. I mean, you're focused on this game because this game really determines how the rest of your season might go. Obviously, these two teams could end up meeting once again down in Dallas, well, technically Arlington at AT&T Stadium at the end of the year for the Big 12 championship game, which a lot of people have. But when I look at it, this it's a big game. But I think I'm finally got my conclusions on Texas in this ball game. I've got what I'm thinking about this game. And I think Texas is going to win. I think that this game is close throughout. I think it's about a 4-point game. Texas just kind of leads for a majority of this game, similar to what they did against Kansas, but they turn it on later in the ball game, like the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter. I think there's a mistake from Oklahoma's behalf, whether it's a big play defensively or a turnover from Dylan Gabriel. Something happens there that really gets Texas out by 2 scores, and I think Texas holds on to those 2 scores. I'm going to go 42-30. Give me the Longhorns in this one. I think they win Red River. But before we go to the next game, we've got Blake. Blake, give us a little bit of your analysis and your pick for this ball game.
Yeah, so when I look at this game, what I see is 2 of the best defenses in the country through this season thus far. You have 2 teams especially that excel at stopping the run, which is going to be a big thing going into this one. Oklahoma already, we know, struggles to run the football. Texas has been great at stuffing the run, 24% stuff rate for the Longhorn front 7. But the other big thing that comes out of this is with these defenses is the Oklahoma front 7 with a 14.5% havoc rate, 22% overall for that defense. This Oklahoma defense has been very good at creating havoc for opposing offenses, forcing turnovers, forcing yardage loss plays. That is where this game is going to come down to. If Oklahoma's going to win it, it's going to have to be by forcing mistakes from the Texas offense. Truthfully, I don't know that they're going to be able to do that going into this one. Texas has been good at limiting these. Texas's pass offense, as we know, Oklahoma's going to have to throw the football here. Their pass defense has been strong all season long. I truthfully just don't see a way that if Oklahoma's defense cannot force some yardage losses, some turnovers here, I don't think that they can win this game. And because of that, I don't think they're going to be able to. So I've got Texas winning. I've got Texas covering this. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair in the Cotton Bowl. I've got 23-16. And, yeah.
So you're going with you and Tyler went with the lower score. I went with the higher score. I think we're going to see a little bit more offense in this game. But you guys, you're playing into that defense, better defenses in the country, obviously, with your analysis there with both of your games. But speaking of teams speaking of a team specifically with a good defense and a team that we hinted on a little bit earlier, we got to talk about this game too. It's probably the second biggest game of the weekend. It's probably the second biggest game in the state of Texas this weekend as well. And that's Texas A&M and Alabama. Alabama obviously comes into this one ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll. Texas A&M is unranked. Both Tyler and I do have them in our top 25s, I believe, at this point. But 3:30 kick CBS. Alabama's favored by 2.5 right now, which is practically pick 'em at this point. It's a toss-up of what you want to do between Bama and Texas A&M. I know I'm torn on this game, but I think you two have your definitive thoughts about this game. But first, I'll go to the one side. I'll go to Tyler. What are you thinking about this game? Can Texas A&M keep it close and do an upset similar to what they did 2 years ago?
So with this game, both teams offensively are pretty below average on first and second down plays offensively. So I think the winner of the game is going to have to win the turnover battle, which is pretty key in any football game you play. But also, I think if you're going to be behind the chains, especially on third down, if you're in 3rd and 6 or anything back, and either of these two defenses can sit in pass pro and just play for the field and don't let anything happen. I mean, obviously we know Milroe will run. Max Johnson will take off. But if you let those plays up, that's fine, because I don't think either of these quarterbacks are going to be all too hot specifically through the air. And I think that A&M has the lean for defense because they're one of the best teams on third and fourth down, second best in the nation through analytics. And I think that is going to be a huge lean for A&M. Obviously, at Kyle Field, it's also going to be a pretty raucous environment for the Crimson Tide. When we talk about Alabama, 5-10 years ago, Even as close to like 3-4 years ago, really, they were a team where even if they were the road team, it felt like they were playing as the home team because they were just so intimidating. They never backed down. They were always ready to play on the road, and the last few years it has not been like that at all. Is it going to change? Probably not, because trends like that just oftentimes don't change. But I do think I'm going to go against a lot of what numbers will say, and I guess a lot of feel in this game. I think Alabama wins, and I think they cover. Obviously, it's only a 2.5 point. They're only 2.5 point favorites, so I'm automatically going to pick them to cover, but I think Alabama wins this game, and I think they win it big. I think we're going to get a lot of iffy play from Max Johnson. I just have a feeling that we're going to get. I think he had 2 fumbles last week. I think he actually had 3 fumbles, and he lost 2 of them. And he also had a pick. And I think if you're going to give Alabama's defense an opportunity to go after a quarterback like that, and especially Alabama's played Max Johnson before, so I think a lot of people were talking about that. I mean, Alabama, yes, under different defensive schemes, but I think they're going to be tuned in for Max Johnson. They're not seeing anything new, and it's obviously going to hurt A&M because you're not having Wegman out there at quarterback. So I think Alabama wins this game big. It's just a gut feeling I have. I think, I know I've talked about this game with a few other people, and everyone I know is picking A&M to win this game, but I don't know. It's just a feeling I have. I'm going to go ahead and pick Alabama to win. I think 26-12. I think it's going to be a sloppy game for A&M at home. Alabama, I don't know. I feel like this is going to be a statement game. They're going to take control of the West with already wins over Ole Miss and what would be A&M. And, you're staring that LSU game down for pure rights in the West.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, and I know a lot of people are torn. I think Blake and I are more torn than you are about this game, Tyler. You have your definitive thoughts about how Alabama's going to pull this one out, but Blake, I'll ask you now. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this is certainly one that I have up to this point really been wrestling back and forth with for a while. These are two of probably the best teams these might be the 2 best teams in the West as we stand right now. They have been tested multiple times. Both of them have, or at least Alabama once against Texas. Obviously, that test did not go well for them. What I'm looking at in this game is just like down at Red River, we have 2 of the best defenses, 2 of the best defensive fronts in the country. Well, one of the other ones is sitting right here in this game with Texas A&M. They have been exceptional up front all year defensively. They have a pretty incredible 18% success rate opposing offenses have against the Texas A&M defense on passing down, so your 3rd and longs, opportunities like that. That defensive line has been a nightmare for opposing offenses. It is hard to see with the way that Alabama offensive line has played thus far this season, any way that is not the key factor in this game. If Alabama's offensive line can take the step forward that I think most of us have expected them to all season long, especially with what we heard from them in the preseason and camp times, then that can be a swing point. But right now, with how they've played, with how we've seen them play, they got pushed around at Bryant-Denny by Texas. They struggled pretty mightily at UCF, or at USF, sorry. They've just not shown what they've needed to. You look at, and then over to the Texas A&M offensive side of the football, Max Johnson, I personally think, is a very capable quarterback here. I think he's going to be more than able to take over this game for A&M offensively. He's got 2 great weapons to throw to in Evan Stewart and Nia Smith. And I think they're going to have a really successful day outside against Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry and Arnold, respectively, there. Every way I look at this game, it all just screams A&M to me. And that's coming from somebody who I thought this Alabama team was the favorite for the national title in the preseason, but they just haven't shown anything to me that they can back that up yet. That could change this weekend, but right now, everything I see makes me lean A&M, and that's what I'm going to take here. I'm going to take A&M to go outright here, 26-16 over the Tide.
So Blake's picking 10-point game. Tyler's picking a little bit more, a 14-point game. He's picking 2 touchdowns. So now it's back to me, and I'm just gonna hammer on the same things that you guys have said about this game. Obviously, Alabama's had those questions. The front really has been iffy this year. Texas game, it was a glaring issue. South Florida game was a glaring issue. It wasn't in that second half more so than the first. Against Ole Miss, they started to get things together, and that's what I come back to a lot on this game is that second half against Ole Miss, because overall I think, even though I do have Ole Miss a little bit higher than Texas A&M in my top 25s, I think when you look at overall raw talent on rosters, Texas A&M is better than Ole Miss. I think they are. And Alabama struggled with Ole Miss for a majority of that ball game until they got a couple big plays. If anything, that's the same thing that happened with Texas. And when you look at Texas A&M and turn it on the opposite side, they've had their troubles of letting up big plays. Look at the Miami game. Tyler Van Dyke was throwing all over them with deep balls the entire game. And Milroe will get his one. He's had in all two of the big games so far, the Ole Miss game and the Texas game, he's had that 40, midfield range touchdown that he's thrown. That's been a beautiful pass. I mean, his deep ball has been very good this year, I will say, from Jalen. It's just, is Alabama going to be able to dominate up front? And I don't think that they're going to be able to, but I keep going back and forth on this game. I think I'm more back and forth than the three of us. I think I'm the most back and forth in this game. At the beginning of the season, I had A&M winning this ball game. And after Texas beat Alabama, I still, was thinking A&M was going to win this ball game. But, Alabama did get it done against Ole Miss. That wasn't Bryant-Denny, but what I come back to and what's going to be my final decision about this game is look at this game over the past 2 seasons. This game in the past 2 seasons has been, you had the upset win for Texas A&M. The first time since UL Monroe beat Alabama that they had lost to an unranked opponent, which was back in 2007. And Texas A&M, that was a high-scoring one. They won that one on the last-second field goal. Last year was a defensive slugfest between these two teams that went down to the wire once again, this time in Bryant-Denny. And because it's been so tight, and because when I look at the history of this game in recent and look at really the similar players or people, as well as talking about Max Johnson. Max Johnson, 2 years ago almost beat Alabama himself at LSU. Down at Bryant-Denny, he almost beat them in 2021. So he's a capable quarterback. Say what you want about him being a backup at Texas A&M. He's capable. It's just they got to protect the football. And that's really a big question for me. But Evan Stewart and Nye Smith will get their own. I think Max Johnson has a couple deep balls, and I think that might sway this game. But to make my final point here, I think that when you look at everything, you look at all the metrics, you look at everything, it's screaming Aggies. But some of the gut feelings are saying, well, it's Bama. They're one of the best programs in the country. They still got Nick Saban. They've turned the ship around in the past 2 weeks. I don't know if they really have. I get they had that win against Mississippi State and Ole Miss. They still look shaky. But I think Texas A&M, I don't know. I just feel like they got something special cooking up this weekend. I do. I think they got something special cooking up down there with 12s at Kyle Field. So I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to differ from Tyler. I'm going to go Texas A&M over Bama. Very similar and dramatic fashion as 2 years ago, but a similar game to last year. I'm going to go 24-20. A&M wins the ball game over Alabama by either a mistake from Jalen Milroe late in the game or a game-winning drive by Max Johnson where he uses his talent and Stewart and Smith, and they go ride, and they upset Alabama. Give me the Aggies. I'm going gig them on this one. Texas A&M takes the victory. So that's the two main games, the two biggest games in Texas this week. So now we'll turn our attention to a little north, to closer by us in Columbus. The Buckeyes, Ohio State's taking on Maryland this week, and a lot of people in the Ohio State community, in the Big Ten community, feel like Maryland might be a bit slighted of not being in the top 25. Tyler, you nor I really have them in our top 25, maybe not even top 30s to be completely honest with you. But Maryland undefeated coming into this one. Ohio State 20-point favorites. It's the big noon game. Get to listen to Gus and Joel call the Buckeyes the world-famous Ohio State Buckeyes, as Gus always says nowadays. But Tyler, I'll ask you, do we think 20 points is a little too much for Ohio State this weekend?
20 points is an interesting line because I don't think Maryland's going to be able to really score all too much. It's just going to really depend on what this OSU offense is going to look like. And obviously, coming off a bye week, they got the big win at Notre Dame. Big weight off their shoulders. But they've only dropped, 35 against Youngstown State, 23 against Indiana. They did drop 63 on Western Kentucky, but they really haven't dropped points, and I think it's because of the way they're playing and a mixture of the clock rules. I think everyone's not scoring nearly as much as they were last year, obviously because the clock rules just eliminate so much time. And more commercials, which is great for the fans. Good job, NCAA. But, I just don't think Ohio State's going to score really too much this season just because of the way they play. I think we are going to see a really good passing offense right here, though. I think this is a big spot for Kyle McCord. Obviously, you get the big win against Notre Dame on the road, your first true road test. I mean, yeah, sure, you can call Indiana his true first road test because it's his first game, I guess second game starting technically, but I don't know. I think he's going to have a big weight lifted off his shoulders. He's the guy for the Ohio State Buckeyes at quarterback. No more questions are going to be asked about either him or Devin Brown or, even Aaron Nolan next year. I don't think Aaron Nolan has a shot to even touch the field next year, unless if, he the backup or whatever. But this is Kyle McCord's team, and obviously when they beat Notre Dame, you saw how pumped he was. Locker room videos were going crazy after the game. He was feeling very disrespected, and I think this is going to be a big day for Kyle McCord. I don't think they cover, but I do think they drop 35. I'm going to go 35-17 Maryland. I think Maryland is, they are, they're undefeated, but when you look at the schedule, Towson, they have 2 wins in FCS. Charlotte, their only win is against an FCS opponent. Virginia, Michigan State, and Indiana. We don't need to get in all of those, but Virginia winless, Michigan State in purgatory right now, and Indiana is, they're 2-3 with, a win over Indiana State and a 4 overtime win against Akron, which, me and Blake were, of course, watching because why would we not be? But, I just think this Maryland record is looking a little good because of who they've played. I think Maryland at the end of the day will probably be a mid-level East team, which is good enough to make a bowl game, which is, good for the Maryland program, but I don't think it's going to be enough to take down the Buckeyes. 35-17.
So you're going 35-17 with this one. Before I get my thoughts, Blake, why don't you take it over here real quick?
Absolutely, yeah. I look at this Ohio State team as what is right now the best team in the country to start off here, to get that out there. They are playing at an elite level and really every facet of the game. Their offense has been rock solid, almost no concern there outside of the fact that they have struggled to run the ball at times this year. 62nd in effective rushing ability for the Buckeyes right now. Could be a concern as we get later in the year, not a concern this weekend, frankly. Maryland has not been the best team by any means at stopping the run, and especially with that, or especially for their match with Ohio State this weekend, they've been less effective at stopping the pass, which we know Ohio State will be able to take advantage of at a extremely high level. This Ohio State team, just coming off that win against Notre Dame, had their prove-it moment there. They came out of it with a win. I just see this team as the best in the country. I don't see any way that they are going to drop in any type of letdown to Maryland, especially with that bye weekend there, breaking it up. This Ohio State team's playing not just to prove that they are the best in the country, but to prove that they are a national title favorite at the end of the year. I see no way that doesn't continue. Maryland offensively has been solid. I like this Maryland team a lot to make probably a nice bowl game at the end of the year, to finish probably 4th in the East. It's a good team, but it's just not going to be able to match up with the Buckeyes, especially in Columbus this weekend. I've got Ohio State 35-19 over the Terps.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of got very similar thoughts about this game. We all just think Ohio State's very good right now, and they're going to take it over Maryland in this one. It's Maryland, as I said, undefeated. Ohio State undefeated, but I think to hammer on Tyler's points, I think that Maryland's record might be a bit inflated. I think that they're good. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they're a lot of people are like, oh, maybe Maryland could do what they do the past couple years, and Ohio State really, when they play this game in Columbus, it's a totally different game between when they play this game in College Park. Because every other while they play this game in College Park, Ohio State gets a little, on their toes against Maryland, including last year. This year, I just think that Ohio State, coming off the big win, they got the bye, they can come back down to earth. I do think Maryland does cover, but I think Ohio State they look good in this ball game. I think the defense once again continues to have a fantastic season. I think Kyle McCord has a good game once again. I agree with what Blake said and what Tyler said he's the guy. He's the guy in Columbus, and I think he's realized, I can take this over. I look good, and the Notre Dame game, he looked very good. He looked very impressive to me, and I think that I agree with Blake here. I think Ohio State's just going to continue to sit there and say, look, we're making a shot for the best team in the country. I have them as the best team in the country right now. I'm torn between them and Texas, but I think those two at the top are really just they're my 1-2 right now, and for good reason. And I think Ohio State will continue to really hammer that home. I'm going to go Ohio State in this one, 31-14. I'm going to go Ohio State over Maryland in this ball game. So that'll be all for that one. So now we'll go to a ranked matchup this weekend, ranked by AP poll standards, and that's Georgia and Kentucky. Georgia last weekend, a lot of people are saying, they only beat Auburn by 7. They only beat them 27-20. They were down for a majority of that ball game. Brock Bowers is the only reason they won. Well, a lot of people also, don't think about a lot of other factors in that ball game, including that being in Auburn coming off of a loss, Auburn being back home, all of these things that happen. But Kentucky coming off a fantastic performance. Ray Davis ran all over the Florida Gators. Do we think he'll be able to do that on Georgia this weekend, Tyler?
So, talking about Georgia, you were talking about that Auburn game. Another thing to add in about, how that game was going to be a little bit dangerous for them. Auburn flat out looked horrible the week before against A&M. They looked horrible. They could not move the ball offensively. And you knew Auburn was going to give them everything that they had. And they threw some unique sets out there, a lot of motion to keep Georgia on their feet. And when we're talking about what Auburn did against them, we're talking about the quarterback run with Robbie Ashford and Peyton Thorne. Both of them were heavily involved in the running game. And that was a majority of the running game because I think they had over 200 rushing yards. But when you look at it, over 100 of them were from those two. And they really couldn't run the ball. Jarquez Hunter did not have a big number game. He made some good plays with some jump cuts, keeping some plays alive. But, Georgia was all over it up front. And if we're going to talk about Devin Leary, is he going to, are they going to design runs for him? No, they're not going to. Is he going to get out of the pocket? Maybe a few times. But he's not a serious running threat, I don't think, for this Georgia Bulldog defense. And we're talking about Kentucky's passing offense. It has been lackluster to say it for Kentucky. They have not been great. Kentucky, maybe because they didn't have to throw the ball, but they didn't even have 70 passing yards last week against Florida. I don't know if Kentucky will have the athletes and the personnel up front to really be able to run the ball and shove Georgia back. Georgia, if you're going to catch Georgia, it's going to be in the first half. But obviously, when we're talking about South Carolina and Florida, I think Kentucky's better than both of those teams. But I don't think Kentucky has the passing offense to really just be able to come into Georgia and take it from them. I do think they cover only because their defense is very good. I think their defense is very good. Honestly, I don't think that offense is going to be there. Right? This is a game for Georgia where they got out of Auburn. They left Jordan Hare with a win. That's all they wanted. And now they can focus, they can lock in, and they can play Kentucky at their own house. I think Georgia's going to have a big day. I think this game finishes 23-13. I do think it's only a 10-point game, but I think it's a very convincing 10-point game.
Yeah, I think you bring up some good points there in that ball game. Blake, I'll turn it over to you to get really your thoughts on this game, being back at Georgia this weekend.
Yeah, I think Tyler hit the nail on the head with a lot of what he said there. This is a Georgia team that escaping Jordan-Hare Stadium with that close win over Auburn. It's a scare, certainly, but I don't think it's nearly as concerning as a lot of people would look at it as. That Auburn team is well coached. That Auburn team has talent in certain areas that they were able to hurt Georgia with, and they took the fight to them. I just don't see Kentucky, even though they are probably a more talented team than Auburn is right now, being able to take that same fight to the Bulldogs, especially having to go down to Athens to play this game. Devin Leary is not going to be able to run the football on that Georgia team. It's just not going to happen. Not going to be able to do that. They're going to have to go with a conventional run game, and Georgia's just going to be able to stop that. They've been able to all year. They've been effective against the rush when it's in a conventional sense, keeping it either off tackle or inside the tackle with the running back, with no need to really look to contain the QB. They've been stellar. So with them taking that away, it's going to come down to whether Devin Leary can throw the ball with the effectiveness they need to win this game. And I don't see him being able to, especially with the way this Georgia defensive front has played against in the pass rush. They've been an extremely good team in pass rush, even though their sack numbers have been low. They've been creating heavy pressure all year. They got to Peyton Thorne several times last week. It probably changed the outlook of that game early, although Auburn did keep it close later on. I just don't see any way that Kentucky really has any life offensively in this game. I keep waiting for this Georgia team to wake up overall. I've said it for weeks now. I think they were going to have a wake-up game soon. They didn't have it last week, even though I said they would. I think they have it this week. I've got Georgia winning big. I've got them keeping this game, or keeping the Kentucky offensive bay. I've got 27-6 Bulldogs.
Yeah, and Blake, I'm gonna build off that with very similar sentiments of this ball game. Georgia's still good. And a lot of people are going to sit there and say, Georgia's okay. No. Georgia is still good. They're still a good ball club. They still got talent. And I think I agree with you. I think that they're just going to have a bounce-back game this weekend, and they're going to show it, back home. And I think the biggest reason why I think Kirby Smart's going to have these guys fired up. I think he's going to sit there and say, look, everybody's slighting you right now. Everybody's saying you're not the number one team in the country. Everybody's saying, this, that, and the other. Everybody's saying that Carson Beck didn't look good in that Auburn game. Everybody's saying Brock Bowers is just our offense. I think they're going to prove that, they're still here. I think they are, and I think they're going to prove it by a big way as well with you, Blake. I got Georgia by a lot as well. I don't think Kentucky's going to be able to do much because they're going to try to run through Ray Davis, and it's not going to work. And that's going to, have to make Devin Leary make some plays, and he hasn't looked the best this year, and I think that'll come back to bite them in this ball game. I'm going to go Georgia in this one, 31-7 at home. I'm going Bulldogs big. I think they limit Kentucky in this one, 31-7 Georgia over Kentucky, 7 o'clock game on ESPN, but the 7:30 game on ABC, Saturday Night Football game. This one's interesting. Notre Dame goes on the road once again to take on a top 25 team from the ACC. This time it's Louisville. Louisville ranked 25th, Notre Dame 10th in the AP poll. Louisville did not touch either of our top 25s, Tyler, but Notre Dame favored by roughly a touchdown, 6.5 points right now. How are we feeling about this game? Does Notre Dame get caught maybe looking ahead next week, or maybe tired after still playing continuously through this really first chunk of the season?
So Notre Dame obviously coming off the big win against Duke the week before the tough loss against Ohio State, and they rebounded really well. I did not think they were going to be able to – They kept it close with Duke, and I think Duke might have outplayed them in the second half, but I didn't think that Notre Dame was really going to be able to keep up with them really in a sense. I thought they were just going to be kind of out of it, and I think they looked fine. Really if they're getting clean quarterback play, they're not turning the ball over in that facet of the game. They're just playing really good defense, and they're beating teams straight up. And obviously we've seen Sam Hartman lead a game-winning drive down the field with I think it capped off with an estimated touchdown at the end with about a minute or 2 minutes or so. But they're getting clean quarterback play, and I think Louisville, when we talk about them, they're able to run the ball pretty in a solid sense. But I think that they're about to run into a team that is focused. I think that In a stretch like this, you think, yeah, maybe they do get caught looking ahead because obviously they have the big game with USC the next week. But I think when we're talking about this Louisville team, they're about to run into a brick wall. The opener, they played a close game with Georgia Tech. They played a really close game with Indiana. Last week on a Friday night, they went to NC State, and they dropped 13 points on NC State. And we're talking about a Notre Dame offense. Yes, games aren't they don't transfer from opponent to opponent or whatever you want to talk about. But this Notre Dame team, they after that rain delay against NC State, they handled them. They dropped 45 on them, and I think Notre Dame is just too good of a team for Louisville. And I like Louisville. I love what they did with the hiring of Brom. I think he's going to be a great coach for them. I just don't think it's going to be this year. Not in this game. I think Louisville, with how their schedule is looking, I think they could make the ACC championship game just because they're not going to have to play Florida State or Clemson, which is big. They're going to have to go on the road at Miami, and they're going to have to play Duke. But out of that, you get the 2 Virginia schools and at Pitt. So I think this is a Louisville team that their record is going to look good. I think their record is going to be a little bit better than what they actually are. But yeah, I think Notre Dame's just going to be too tough for this Louisville team. I think Notre Dame is going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively. I think 34-16 is where I have this at. I could be a little high scoring with how Notre Dame is, how they play offensively, but I think Notre Dame is they're going to make a statement before this USC game.
Yeah, and I think before I get to mine, I think Blake might have to interject here real quick and give a little differing thoughts on this ball game from Louisville. Is that right, Blake?
It is, yeah. So I look at this game. Everything I see says Notre Dame should go and win this game, should be the favorite. However, Notre Dame coming off of a heartbreaking, last-second loss to Ohio State, having to play Duke down to the very wire, winning a game that Duke really kind of clutched defeat from the jaws of victory in and handed that game right back to the Irish at the end of that one. They've played 2 games in the road that have been decided effectively with maybe a combined 45 seconds left. They have played absolute barn burners back-to-back weeks, and they get next week to see the Trojans of USC and Lincoln Riley. So they are in an absolutely brutal month-long stretch here. They're right in the heart of it. Going down to Louisville for a night game, for the biggest game that this program has had in years, by all means years, especially with Brom there in his first season, the Louisville alum, the Louisville legend. Jack Plummer's played great. Louisville has run the ball effectively this year. They are going to go into this game, and I think they've got a strong shot to win it. I think they're going to win it. Notre Dame is just going to be worn down. They are the better team. I have no doubt about it. But at some point, especially in college football, when you get in a stretch like this, you're going to break at some point. And I think it's going to be this weekend for the Irish. I've got Louisville taking this one 31-23 at home in the upset. They're going to get a nice little field storming down there at L&N Stadium.
See, I think I'm going to agree with Tyler on this one, Blake. I see a lot of people are saying, well, Notre Dame might be tired, and that might be true. But I don't think Louisville's that good. There's a reason why they're not in my top 25, and there's a reason why they are not in my top 30. I don't think they're as good as people making them out to be. Obviously, yeah, Brom is a great coach. You saw what he did, in his past place at Purdue and what he did for that program. But I just think Notre Dame is going to show that they're a really good football team this weekend. Obviously, Duke, that game went the way, I think I expected it to go. Low scoring, slugfest, battled it out between Notre Dame and Duke. This one, I think that Notre Dame might be a little bit more limited, I guess, over maybe their capacity of offense, but I just think that they dominate this game because they got another big one next week. They got USC next week, traveling to town on NBC. They're playing 4 straight games in prime time, 2 on NBC, 2 on ABC. And if you can go and face 4 ranked teams in a row, 2 of them being on the road, and win and go 3-1 in that, or even 2-2 in that, that's still good. And I think Notre Dame is going to show that, hey, look, folks, we lost to Ohio State, but we're still a good football club, and I think they're going to prove that this weekend. I got Notre Dame in this one, 31-13 over Louisville. Give me the Irish somewhat big in this one. But now to the noon kick on ESPN. This one's interesting. LSU travels to Missouri. Both of these teams around the same ranking in the AP poll. LSU, Missouri, two solid offenses, two very high-powered players out at wide receiver with Malik Neighbors and Luther Burden out there for Missouri. But who do we think, Tyler, is going to get the edge in this ballgame?
If you were gonna get the LSU that we seen last week, this game would be nuts again. I don't think it's gonna be as nuts. I think it still could be a pretty damn good game between these two teams. And I actually have, going to my spoiler with my score. I have it at a touchdown game, and it's a pretty fun score. I think LSU. Obviously, when we're talking about LSU and Missouri, LSU is going to have a better roster talent. If we're talking about just secondary, Mizzou would win this game probably by about 80. But with that being said, I think when we're talking about LSU, last week they went against Jackson Dart, an Ole Miss team on the road who just did not look good against Alabama. They had a lot to prove. They had a lot to say about them wanting to stay in the fight for the SEC West. And, obviously... I don't think anyone really expects them to do that. But if they won out from there and just won the SEC championship, they would be playing for the playoff and probably be the number one national seed going into it. So, we don't know what goes on in locker rooms, but that's the expectation, especially if you're playing the SEC, that you're going to be playing for a national championship at some point. And I think Lane Kiffin, with him being there, he probably expects to win the SEC championship if he started off 0-4 in SEC play. So. He's just, I don't know. It's Lane Kiffin. You never know what's going on in that locker room. And he had them boys ready to play offensively last week, maybe not defensively, but, they did their thing. So when we're talking about LSU, I think we're going to do a little bit of the same thing. We're talking about a road team who just lost, especially LSU now taking their second loss. It's rough. And if you want to stay in the SEC West, you have to win this game. It is a must win for Mizzou. Obviously, they're undefeated. They're at home. This is not their first big home game against a tough opponent. They played Kansas State. They handled them. They ended up winning that game on a 61-yarder field goal, which was longest in SEC history. That's what it takes to win football games. But I think when we're talking about LSU, I think they're just going to be a little bit too. I think they're going to be ready to come in and play this game. I think this is going to be the best defensive outing they've had against a bigger opponent. We're not going to talk about anything like Grambling or anything, but when we're talking about the Florida State game, the Ole Miss game, basically any SEC play game, I think they're going to play better than they did against Mississippi State, and maybe not look like that score wise, but I think at a total offense or total team total team play and how they're going to have to play and who they're playing. I mean, obviously Mizzou is a pretty damn good team. I think we both have them in our top 25. So I think LSU is going to play a really good game. Brady Cook is going to be he's going to be the guy. He's going to have to win a football game here. And I think that if LSU can get a few turnovers from Brady Cook, they're going to win this game, and I'm going to predict that to happen. I'm going to go ahead and take LSU to win this game. I got a 33-27. I think this game will be fun, or 33-26, excuse me. So LSU does cover by half a point, but I don't know. I have a good feeling about this LSU team.
Yeah, and before I get my sentiments, let's talk about the LSU really fan in the room with Blake. Blake, after last weekend, wasn't exactly the most fun weekend, but do we think the Tigers are bouncing back this weekend?
It was certainly not a good weekend last week. By no means. The defense of this LSU team it's just been atrocious thus far this year. No way really around that. 55 to Ole Miss, which although a good offensive team, just cannot happen. Especially when your offense puts up 49, in response. To lose that game is just brutal, just in any sense of it. This LSU team is better than they have played. I firmly believe that. I've believed going into the season this was one of the best teams in the country, and I still think it can be. However, that defense, especially the secondary, with three starting cornerbacks, all transfers, both outside corners and the nickel corner, all having transferred in from around the country there. Two of which with very little FBS experience in Denver Harris and Zy Alexander. It's a team that just hasn't developed on the field yet. And at some point, you hope they will, but I just don't know if this is going to be the week that they can do it, especially going up against the Missouri team going into this year that I caught a lot of flack from some individuals in here for being I was very high on this Missouri team. I still am. Luther Burden, I believe, is the best receiver in the country. He is the ultimate type of player that can take over a game. That being said, though, with as talented as Luther Burden is, I don't think he's the X factor in this game. I think the X factor is going to come from the defensive coordinators of this game. Blake Baker versus Matt House. One of these two is going to have to step up. This Missouri defense, just like the LSU defense, has underperformed. Not quite to the level of the LSU one, but this Missouri defense was great last year. They have not performed at the level that they are capable of. Is this going to be the week where they can show a little more life against what has been easily one of the best offenses in the country in LSU? I believe they're ranked 4th overall right now in typical statistics. This is going to be a good game. Likely it's going to be what should be a close game, especially being in Columbia. Can one of these teams slow down the effectively 2 NFL receivers that each team has? Honestly, I don't think LSU is going to be able to. I don't think that LSU is going to be able to scheme Luther Burden out of this game. I don't think they're going to be able to scheme Brady Cook or scheme pressure onto Brady Cook all game. And I think that Blake Baker's going to be able to do that against LSU. I think Missouri's going to have pressure on Daniels. I think that LSU's still going to score, but not to the level they're going to have to. I've got Missouri taking this game outright. I've got it 44-38. Still going to be a high-scoring affair, but Missouri's defense is going to come up big when it matters.
See, I have a score similar to Blake, but I have the sentiment similar to Tyler here. I just think that LSU's talent bails them out this weekend. I still think I know Blake thinks that they can be one of the better teams in the country, and I've said it all year. They're really a couple play calls in the first half, and not being conservative late in the game from being undefeated right now. With holes, yes, but still, I mean, I think that LSU, this offense, Jaden Daniels, I've been high on this kid since he was a freshman at Arizona State. I love this kid. He's a great quarterback, and he's played lights out this year. But, Missouri, Luther Burden's looked good, Brady Cook has looked good. That team has looked good this year. I think LSU gets the momentum in a position because this might be their wounded animal game. This might be their game where they say, look, we got to win. We can't fall to 3-3 or else their season could be like done. Like it could go down the drain really quick. But I think they flip it around this week. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, as Blake says. I'm going to go 49-41. Give me the Tigers in this one. They do cover in this game on that ESPN noon kick, but I just think that LSU gets it going this week, and that could be because I'm high on that team. Could be because, mistake or something happens here or there. But to our penultimate game that we'll be picking this weekend, we've got one that not a lot of people will be seeing. 3 p.m. game on the Pac-12 network. Washington State ranked 13th by the AP poll. Travels out to UCLA. This one's interesting. UCLA favored by 3.5 in this one out in the Rose Bowl. Tyler, I know you were big on that UCLA and Utah game. Do we think that the Bruins might have something for the Cougs this weekend?
I think this game has potential to be the best college football game played this weekend just because of how, we have huge brands going at it this weekend. I think this game was going to be really good. I think it's going to be a really fun watch. We're going to watch Cam Ward, obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. To me, is the best quarterback in the nation at the moment playing on the field. I think he's been fantastic, and they're doing it without really a run game, really. Like, that's kind of, even insane. And I think Dante Moore, who will be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation in the coming years. If not, maybe at the end of this year, we'll solidify him in that place. Obviously, didn't play good against Utah, but let's get real here. First big road test at Utah as an 18-year-old. Not going to go well, and it didn't. but I do think this game will be really fun to watch. The biggest thing is if UCLA knows that Washington State cannot run the ball, will they be able to key in on the pass game and stop Cam Ward and this offense? And we got some big time players on this offense for Washington State, but also we have this UCLA defense is pretty good, and I think their strength relies on their edge rush. I think that they're going to be able to get to Cam Ward, but also I think a lot of their talents also come at stopping the run, which I don't know. I don't know if I have questions about the secondary, but I'm not as sure as on the secondary as I am this front seven in general. I think Washington State wins this game. They're 3.5-point dogs. I have it 29-23. I think UCLA's defense is going to come up pretty handy here, but I don't know. I'm loving this Cam Ward offense at Washington State. I'm gonna trust them until I see them lose because I wasn't high on this team really at all. I had them finishing 9th in preseason. I'm gonna pick them until they lose or prove me wrong, and I don't know. I'm gonna go with Cam Ward right here.
All right, now before I can give my statements, Blake, how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, just like Tyler is, I'm really excited about what this game has to offer this weekend. I think it's going to probably be the game of the week in terms of its on-field product. These are two teams that I'm extremely high on right now. I love what I've seen out of Jake Dickert and Washington State Cougars. I really like what is kind of bubbling there with that UCLA team right now. It's a younger team. They lost a lot of pieces last year, but they have shown really impressive steps all year here. It's going to be a game where this is going to come down to the big play. I firmly believe that which offense is going to be able to make that big strike, which defense is going to be able to prevent it, because that is what these two teams have kind of been living on this year. Washington State's offense, UCLA's offense, both have been able to deliver big plays when it matters. They've been very good at it, and both defenses have really been kind of susceptible to it. So which team can make that play? And especially on the UCLA sideline, is this the week where Dante Moore kind of has his coming out party and shows that he is going to be that top-level quarterback going forward? I think it absolutely could be. I was very high on Dante Moore coming out of high school last year. He was my top-rated quarterback in the class personally. That being said, I don't think this is going to be the week that he has that coming out party. I like Washington State in this game. I just like that offense a lot right now. They have looked almost unstoppable this season. Cam Ward is playing at a Heisman level. I like the Cougars here. I like it close. I'm taking it 27-26, a 1-point affair here at the Rose Bowl, but give me Washington State.
I think all of our scores are actually pretty similar. I think we've all got them in the 20s there, but you guys both pick Washington State. I'm going to flip it with a little bit of a spoiler there with my pick. I don't know. UCLA looked pretty solid. You know, Dante, obviously the one mistake against Utah. And Utah is the best defense in the Pac-12. In my opinion, it probably goes Utah, Oregon, and then this UCLA team. And then probably Oregon State. And I know Oregon State played Washington State pretty well up in Pullman a couple weeks ago. But it went the way of Washington State, and they were able to do what they wanted offensively. But Cam Ward's been fantastic this year for the Cougs. He's had a great season so far, but I don't know. I just think that the defense, because this is a road game for Washington State, I think that it's in the Rose Bowl, it's in Pasadena. I think that the defense is going to be the key in this game, and I think the defense is going to pull one team ahead of the other. And I think when you look at it on paper, I got the Bruins, man. I just think the defense is key in this ball game. It will be entertaining. It will be a fun game. It will be a back-and-forth affair. But I think Dante Moore and those Bruins lead the charge, and they hand Washington State their first loss of the season. But I have it close as well. I have Washington State covering, I do, by half a point there. I have UCLA 26-23. They win this ball game. Close affair. We all got it in the 20s. We all got it close. But now to our final game that we're going to be picking this weekend. Syracuse, North Carolina. Heels favored by 8. 3:30 game on ESPN. Syracuse coming off of a loss. UNC's looked pretty decent this year. Tyler, I know you're high on the Heels this year. Do we think we finally see a breakout performance from Drake May?
So this game is going to come down to early downs, kind of like the Alabama A&M game. Syracuse offensively is 80th in the nation on early down EPA. offensively, and for North Carolina's defense, they're also 80th in the nation in early down EPA. And what's going to come down to is the passing game, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of passing on third down. And North Carolina, their pass rush is going to get in there. I'm fairly confident of that. The pass rush definitely disrupted Syracuse last week. And defensively, North Carolina is 11th in EPA against passing in the country. So I think North Carolina is going to look pretty good here. I think this is going to be, we really haven't talked about North Carolina. We haven't previewed a game since week 1 against the South Carolina game. We both got that wrong. We picked South Carolina. North Carolina handled them with ease. I think that this could be a game where Syracuse does pull it out, because North Carolina offensively is one of the worst teams on first and second down in the country, and Syracuse is top 10 in first early down EPA defensively. So this could be a game where we do see North Carolina, they do get upset, they get put in some third and longs, and it doesn't look good, but they are one of the best third down teams in the nation offensively. I'm going to go ahead and pick North Carolina to win this one. I'm going to go ahead and pick them by 14, 35-21 at home. I think it's a big week for the Tar Heels.
All right, Blake, we'll turn it over to you here real quick, and then we'll see what I think about this game. Do we think this one's being competitive?
I really don't see this game being that competitive. I don't think it's going to particularly look good for the Qs at the end of the day. I'm liking the way Tyler's talking about this game here. I like his score prediction there as well, or at least the margin of defeat there. As a little spoiler there, I also have a 14-point game in favor of the Tar Heels. But I just don't see the Syracuse team being able to match what the North Carolina team can put up offensively. I think it's a really good North Carolina offense. Their defense has been wishy-washy this year. It's not nearly what it was last year by any means, though, but it still has its holes. That being said, so does the Syracuse defense. The Syracuse defense is not one to be, or not very high rated against the big play, which we know North Carolina absolutely can deliver. They're also just not an effective defense really against the long drive. They're going to struggle against this North Carolina offense. I don't see any way that doesn't come to fruition unless they just create absolute just a mess of a game. But North Carolina's disciplined. They're a good football team. Their defense, like I said, wishy-washy. Syracuse can be able to put up some points, but they're not going to be able to put up nearly enough to match this North Carolina team. Like I said, I'll go a 14-point gap here as well, but I'm going to go 37-23 North Carolina.
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with you guys here. I just think North Carolina is going to outdo Syracuse in this game. I actually have double the gap that both of you guys have. I think that North Carolina finally shows that, hey, we mean business this year. They've been kind of, as Tyler mentioned, flying under the radar this year. But I think they show that we mean business this year. And I think that they show out really big with Drake May. I've got North Carolina 42-14 over Syracuse this weekend. Big win for the Heels at home. And that'll wrap up our picks for the week. But before we close out the show, we've got our upset picks of the week. So first, I'll ask you, Tyler, what's your upset pick of the week?
Give me Temple plus 14 at home against UTSA. Going to be about 55 degrees, and it's going to be raining. I think Temple has a good shot at beating UTSA.
So that's Tyler's upset of the week. And Blake, you're welcome to the show as a guest today. You got an upset of the week as well. A little interesting one here that you've got.
I do. I've got Arizona at plus 21.5 over USC. USC looking ahead to Notre Dame this week. Big game for them here. Arizona, not a team to be looked over. I like this Wildcat team. I think they're going to go in there and they're going to get it done.
So that's the upsets from you guys. My upset pick of the week is going to be Rutgers, a plus 14 underdog over Wisconsin up there at Camp Randall. I don't know. I just something's telling me that this game's going to be a lot closer than that plus 14 is going to show. And, maybe weather, maybe something, maybe, divine intervention comes in and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and Greg Schiano pull out a win. But that's my upset pick of the week, and that will wrap up our show. For our special guest, Blake, for Tyler, this is Cade. Thanking you all for watching and listening to the Orbit Football Podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our socials and stay up to date with our posts, including new top 25s, picks of the week, and our wrap-ups for our score predictions. But that'll be all for this episode of the Orbit Football Podcast.